Hello and Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Selena, and I'm a part of the Let's Discuss A Course in Miracles webinar team at the Foundation for Inner Peace. The mission of the Foundation for Inner Peace is to publish, distribute, and discuss A Course in Miracles. And we have been holding these Let's Discuss online webinars as an expression of our vision of extending love through A Course in Miracles teachings. Today's webinar, Creating Your Course Practice in the New Year. It has been pre-recorded. And let me tell you, we are enthusiastic about today's session. There is so much interest in this topic, and we thank all of those for submitting questions during registration. At the end of today's session, I will return to share information about a few online tools that may assist you in your course studies, as there are several resources provided by the Foundation for Inner Peace. Before we begin, I invite you to join me in prayer. From the text, chapter 2, A Course in Miracles tells us that we can do much on behalf of our own healing and that of others if we think of our situations in this way. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. Now, it is time to introduce our session. We were guided to invite you into a group of Foundation for Inner Peace staff and volunteers as they share ways they have studied A Course in Miracles and what they have found to be most helpful in their practice, how it's led to deepening their connection with Holy Spirit and more peace in their lives. So it is an honor to turn this over to our panelists. They will now introduce themselves before beginning their discussion about practicing A Course in Miracles. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Tam Morgan, and I'm co-president of the Foundation for Inner Peace. And I did not come to the course came to me, and I'll be talking about more of that as we continue this conversation.
I'm Alex Ho. I'm a volunteer with the Foundation for Inner Peace, and I've been a student of the course for much of my life. And my life it's been probably the single most profound influence in my life.
Hi, I'm Laura Fenimore. I'm the Chief Development Officer at the Foundation for Inner Peace and the Volunteer Coordinator. And I was introduced to these books in the late 80s.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I'm a volunteer on the technical end of the Zooms usually, but today I'm on camera, and I've been a long-time course student since the late 80s as well, and it's been just a staple in my life, and it's an honor to be here.
Hello, I'm Sharon Beck. I'm a volunteer for the Foundation for Inner Peace. I volunteer by editing footage from the webinars. I came to the course seriously in about 2009, and I love it.
I'm Jerome Emhoff. I'm a volunteer with Foundation for Inner Peace, working with social media, and I was familiar with the course for a long time, but found the book in a used bookstore in 2008 on Father's Day, and realized at that moment that I had been looking for it. So I took it home and started reading it, and have been a dedicated student since then.
My name is Diane Brook Uzik. I work as an academic advisor for the Foundation for Inner Peace, and largely my work is focused on the translation program. It is an honor to have found the course. I've been a student since 1979.
Wonderful, thank you. And Diane, you're going to give us a summary of A Course in Miracles.
Thank you, Selena. thank you everyone really for giving me this opportunity to think once again about what A Course in Miracles is, what its goals are, and what it says about studying it. A Course in Miracles is a course in spiritual psychotherapy. It's a course because it comes in the form of a text and a workbook and a teacher's manual. In the text, you have all the theory of the course. In the workbook, you have what's equivalent to the laboratory. If you're taking a college course, you do the text to study the theory, but then the workbook really helps you to put it into practice. And then the teacher's manual, and it's an interesting word, teachers, because the course tells us we're all teachers. We're all teaching the most important person on the planet, and that is ourself, what we do believe by demonstration. But the teacher's manual is a wonderful summary in question and answer form of major course themes. So it's a course in spiritual psychotherapy. A Course in Miracles puts you in touch with another dimension within your experience other than the five senses. Most of the time, we identify with being a particular body, a particular personality, with a whole host of stories that we think define us. The Course opens up another dimension that it says is already there. It makes a distinction between that which is real, which it says is that which is eternal and unchanging, versus the ephemeral, the changing, what we identify with, bodies, personality, story. And in making that distinction, it wants us to be aware that the dimension of the real exists wherever we are. It says nothing real can be threatened. And it is psychotherapy, the most sophisticated 21st century psychology any place. One of the gifts of the course is that it really looks at the ego, the part of the mind that believes it is only this body, this personality, and all my stories. It tells us how the mind works. So one of the amazing and also one of the difficult things about the course is it uses language and experience that we understand. In other words, it speaks dualistically, dual meaning two. So it speaks to us as if there is you and me. You are my brother. It speaks as if there is Jesus and us. It speaks as if there is the Holy Spirit and us. He gives us a language that makes sense to us while we think we're here, while he leads us to an experience of love, of joining, of non-dualism. It's absolutely brilliant. He says, and repeatedly, I am spirit, one self, eternal, united with my creator. But he reminds us of that using dualistic language. A Course in Miracles is a guide to getting in touch with that inner teacher, that inner presence. The Course speaks of it as Jesus or the Holy Spirit, whatever you understand that inner presence that is already in you. It is, interestingly enough, not a teaching on being loving. For being loving is beyond what can be taught. But it is a teaching on noticing and getting rid of all the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. It's a very gentle course. It was written as a self-study course. The goal is always to put you in touch with your capital S self and to move you away from your identification with your little s self without denying the little s self while you believe in it. I think the most important thing we can, if we identify as a person, take from the course is we are always a mind making a decision. Always. We are identifying either with our body self or we are identifying with the oneness that we already are. It is also simultaneously a course in healing relationships. That's the course's focus, because so often we either find ourselves or lose ourselves in relationships. Forgiveness is the means of the course. Forgiveness is a huge word, and maybe we will talk about it later, but there is a tremendous amount of resistance to forgiving anyone if we think we are right and they are wrong. I think one of the gifts of the course is it acknowledges our resistance, and it really gives tools to get past that resistance when we are brave enough. What is its goal? Its stated goal is to come to peace, not to put peace on like an overcoat, but to truly, by letting go of our resistance, come into the experience of peace. There's a wonderful line in the course where he says, knowledge is not motivation for learning this course. Peace is. It also reverses our usually unconscious identification with sin. I am a wrong person. Guilt. Many of us are in touch with guilt, feeling unworthy, and or fear. They're all part of the same picture. But it reverses our unconscious identification with being somehow wrong, because at the deepest level, it reminds us we think we left God and oneness and what is eternal, and we never really have. It actually does give guidelines on how to study it. Some of the guidelines are quite loose because it's a very individualized course. Right off the bat, he asks us to make a decision. He says, does it matter whether you study the text first or the workbook or the teacher's manual? You make that decision. You get a sense of what is right for you to study. In the very beginning of the text, so that's chapter 1, Jesus told Drs. Helen Schuckman and Dr. Bill Thetford, this is a course in mind training. When I first read those words, I was terrified. I didn't want to get involved with mind training. But if you think about it, everything we do in this world is mind training. If you read a book, if you call a friend, if you watch a television show, if you meditate, whatever you do, you are training your mind as to what to believe. He goes on to say, all learning involves attention and study at some level. So he is telling Helen and Bill and all of us, this is a book that is meant to be studied and given attention. He also asks us to read the earlier chapters first before we come to the later chapters. So he's saying, read this sequentially, because some of the earlier themes that are introduced in the beginning part of the text would be too frightening for us to come to at the end of the text when he takes us much deeper into that thought system if we hadn't already been prepared. With the workbook, his only caution is don't do more than one workbook lesson a day, because he wants us to absorb what we're doing, not to rush through it. In the introduction to the workbook, he says, and I think that this holds for everything, but he's really speaking about the workbook, which, remember, is the laboratory, the mind training. He says, remember only this: you need not believe the ideas, you need not accept them, and you need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy, but do not allow yourself to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. His emphasis throughout is on experience rather than theology. He offers theology. He makes you safe enough to understand what's going on, but you only have the experience of the course if you do it. He does emphasize application more than theory. And as a final thought, A Course in Miracles makes no claim to finality. It leaves us in the hands of our own internal teacher. In other words, this course prepares us for the rest of what appears to be our life on earth by saying, you now have a whole other dimension you can open to, and that will reinterpret everything that you see and understand and experience. So he says, after you have connected with your own internal teacher and you've followed that inner guidance, God himself will do the rest. And so it is.
Diane, thank you so much for that summary. You offered so much to our listeners, and we have had also so many questions submitted from our audience for this webinar, from listeners and students who have just started studying A Course in Miracles, and also longtime students. So the first question I would like to pose to our panelists is really, what is the best way to begin this course? So we had a lot of people ask, where should we begin? What part of the book? The text, the lessons, the manual for teachers. And someone also asked, should we begin at the beginning of the year? So in other words, what has worked for you all? I'd like to give that to our panel.
So first of all, I'd like to say that explanation and what you gave us, Diane, was just exquisite. And there are so many ways to approach this, but as Diane said, what was given to us was you choose. There is a sequential order to the lessons, so taking the lessons out of order isn't what was directed or given to us to do. I'm a total rebel, so my inclination would be to go backwards and then forwards and upside down and inside out, except that I remember so clearly my mother, who was given this course by Dr. Helen Shepman and Bill Thetford, and worked with them with it. After working with it, and she came upon and met her second husband, and one of the first things he said to her was, "Oh yes, I did the course in 3 months." He might have said 6 months. And I started to laugh and asked my mother, "What did you say?" And she said, "It wasn't what I said, it's what I thought." And I said, "What did you think?" And I thought, he said, "This brilliant man has a lot to learn." It, as Diane said, not more than one lesson a day, but in coming to myself in this, I never wanted to practice the course. It grabbed me into it. And the way that it told me what to do was, I figured this was my mother's way. It wasn't mine. And I was going to find my own way. God damn it. Excuse my language, but there it was. And but I did meditate and I did listen. My whole life, I've always listened. And I heard one New Year's Eve, when I was meditating and bringing in the year, oh, your mother's been so supportive of you in everything you've done your entire life. And she has a limited time left. Well, I didn't know if it was 1 decade, two, but it was just still obvious to me that she was older than I was and would probably go before I went. And I heard, isn't it time that you honor what she's brought to the world, as she has supported everything that you've done? And I realized I'd never really thought of it that way. So I called her up on New Year's Day, which it just happened to be, and said, hey, Mom, would you like to do the course with me? And her first response was, who is this? And we laughed. And I said, well, this is what I was directed. And it took us a year and 3/4 to go through it. And it was the most beautiful practice. And I really loved that this was in the world, and she did that, and it still wasn't my way, which was funny. So then I ended up stepping in to help with the foundation and got further and deeper in, and I was meditating and feeling full of love. And I always meditated through sight, that's the only way I can say it, where I would hear things about what to do to help people. And there was an aspect that was intuitive about it. And I suddenly heard deeper and deeper, stop seeing. It's not about seeing, it's about being. And you need to start being love rather than seeing all the things that are wrong out there. And I'm not going to go deeper into the story at this time, but what I heard was, okay, now just be love. Don't look at anyone. Don't hear anything about anyone. Just be love, not how to practice love. And I noticed that I wasn't as disciplined. Like suddenly my mind would go, oh, my mother could use this. Oh, this would be helpful. And I kept hearing, no, just be. So I realized I was undisciplined. And so I thought, I'm not so disciplined. And I hardly ever hear we or he or, in that kind of voice, but I did hear, we have something to help you with this. Do you want to do this? And I said, more than anything in the world, I want to be that peace and be that love. And what can help me now and deepen this? And I heard, we have something to you, but you need to commit first. Is this what you really want? You need to have the willingness. And I acknowledged my own willingness. And I heard, of course, this is a course in miracles. And I started to laugh, realizing that was my discipline practice. It is time to do it for yourself, not for your mother, not for anyone else. And I was completely surprised and laughed. It's like, of course, that's the discipline. It's the reminder. And in that, it was also starting a study group with my mother and my co-president, Robert Rosenthal. Like, I got dragged into it. So I knew it was what I was supposed to do. And I love to kind of bitch and moan about it, but I needed support. I'm not disciplined, and I didn't want to do it just by myself, but there I was. This is what I was supposed to do. So the next thing that happened was that night I was with my partner, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I don't even want to admit what I'm doing. I'm actually doing the course lessons by myself. And he said, well, I'll do them with you. And he had nothing to do with the course. And I said, you will? And he said, sure, why not? Very disciplined person. And he said, what do I need to know to do it? And I said, you don't have to believe it for it to work. So he said, okay, I'll do it with you. Now this man, we're on round 2, and we're into our 4th year of it. And when I mean 4th year, I mean, we've only this is our 2nd round of going through it, because we never remembered to do it every day, or every moment, so we wait and we feel comfortable to move on to the next lesson. That's what we do. But he has become the one who is the anchor, going, let's do it today. So it will bring you to its practice if you allow it, and if you start to listen. And I want other people to go, but I could talk for hours on this. Anyway, the rules, when you start a question with should, get rid of the should. ask yourself what feels most comfortable. And as long as you do honor the sequential, not doing more than one as far as the lessons go itself, if you're choosing to do the workbook first, it will teach you.
Thanks for that, Tam. That was really wonderful. I always love the personal perspective, because the personal perspective has within it the universal as well as the individual, circumstances. And I think my experience is kind of similar, because I don't say, I'm a little embarrassed about this. The book actually came to me in 1978 when I was in college, and I found it, similar to Jerome, I found it in a bookstore. It wasn't in a used bookstore. It was in a college bookstore. I picked it up, and at that time I was looking at all different kinds of metaphysical things, like the Urantia book and things like that. I kind of, I always carried around, I graduated from college, went to business school. I always carried around with me. I took it on business trips. But I guess, God or Jesus kind of knew that I'm a kind of a stubborn person. So he had to drop it in my lap in 1978, because he knew it was going to take years for me to actually finally focus on this thing. All right. And the thing for me was, for so many years, literally decades, I said, I'm going to get to the course. Sounds like it's really interesting stuff, but I'm going to do my life first. Take care of all this other stuff in my life, and then I'll kind of let it in. All right. So I would do what I'm just suggesting, perhaps not the best way to do it. I would do the dropping in, read a lesson here, read a text, and and it would be very soothing, and I would find wonderful solace and peace in what was being said. But then I'd go back to my crazy life. So, with that as the backdrop, I guess my suggestion is the following: is one, first of all, that one would even ask, what is the best way to begin this course, means that at some level, you as a person have opened up. The fact that you're even thinking about it, contemplating it, means part of you is basically questioning the way that your life is going. And that for me was finally what it came to, which was that I realized, trying all these other different ways to have my life, quote unquote, work, I think it's just time. It's time for me to have another way to do this. And so I would suggest the following. One is just recognize that it is a course that's very highly individualized, as per what Diane said. There will be, just recognize also that there will be times in which you don't do it. There'll be times you're going to throw it against the wall, or you'll be angry because you can't understand, what is this guy saying, because my life doesn't reflect what these principles say. So that comes to I'll be the first person to use the word forgiveness. I think that's really important, is be forgiving of yourself in this process. And also remember that for me, the way I look at the course is that it's easy to look at it as this book, a text, as sections, but really there always is someone else in the room with you, which is the Holy Spirit. It is a lesson in your life, and what it becomes miraculous when basically you allow you practice these principles, and you think with God, and then your life is a reflection of that, starts to change. You don't expect it. It comes in ways which are miraculous, because there is no expectation it'll be there, but it pops up in your reality, and things will, quote unquote, improve, and light will enter it. So I think that one, as I said, is recognize that the fact that you're even asking, looking at it, is a big step. Number two is be forgiving in the process. And the third thing is, I borrow from what I remember one time I was watching a YouTube video, an interview with Carolyn Howe, who I think is a great teacher. And she just said, similar to what Diane said and similar to what Tam said, is it's easy for us to try to study the course as a quote unquote intellectual exercise. And it will take time for one to recognize that that is kind of an ego-based process, that we're trying to quote unquote understand it. But what the course teaches us, there's really two worlds. There's a world of truth and there's a world of illusion. And you kind of ask yourself, well, am I getting caught up in my illusory thoughts about what reality is? Or am I just going to just kind of let go and try practicing the truth and thinking with God, and then just see what happens? So I would, the third point I would just make is just to be quote unquote open-minded, and to the best of one's ability, let go. It's not easy. And I think for most of us, we'll openly admit it's multiple times that we go through the course, or particularly the workbook. But that's fine. That's part of the path. It will be individualized. But just starting it of itself is a great step.
Thank you, Alex. That was great. Hi, I'm really honored to be here. And I just want to say that I prayed for help. And I always believed that there was help out there. And I always knew that there was help out there. But I was really, really unhappy in my life. And I couldn't find a way out or through to forgive myself or to forgive my family for what had been done. So I literally got on my hands and my knees when I was in my early 20s and said, you know, there has to be another way. I didn't know that that was language that was going to be coming up from the course. But I was led to this group of people that were going to talk about this blue book. And I knew nothing about it, but I knew that when I got there, that I was home. I sat on the floor, I cried. I didn't really understand what was being said or even talked about, but I felt like I was home. And that was over 30 years ago. And I took the book, I bought the book, I read the book. I didn't understand a word of the book. Like, I really didn't understand it. But what I understood was that being raised a Catholic, I always felt love from Jesus. Like, that was so pure for me. So when I would sit and read the book, I was crying, not understanding it, but I could imagine myself being held by this symbolic picture of what I imagine Jesus to look like, holding my hand and saying, you're not a fraud. You're not a worthless piece of crap. You are pure love. You are pure love. And you're worthy of being here. So that was my introduction to this book. And, you know, I wanted to understand what it said and how to apply it. So I joined that group, and then I joined another group, and I went into like acceleration modes. I was like in 3 different groups, and, you know, spent years practicing it. And I still consider myself a beginner. I mean, there's so much, but yet it's really, really simple. If I extend love to myself and to my brothers and sisters every day and see us all as who we truly are, then I'm practicing the course. So this topic of how do you practice the course was something that I suggested bringing in, because as the volunteer coordinator, as the person that talks to our donors, because I do fundraising in this foundation, I get to hear people's stories about how they found the course and how they're practicing the course. And I would say more than not, people begin by apologizing. And I'm like, this isn't confession and I'm not a priest, but you don't have to apologize for anything. Like, I'm practicing other things, or I haven't done it right, or I don't know how to do it, and the irony is, of course, there's no failure in God's world. And there's, you know, it's laughable. And yet I too know quite well about what it feels like to feel like a fraud, or that I'm not doing it right. There is no such thing. It's just the ego. So I just want to let the next person go, but thanks so much.
Wow, that was beautiful, Laura. I love what you said about you are pure love. And I hope that everyone that is listening is letting that experience marinate. And I know that you wouldn't be attracted to the course if there wasn't some awareness of your true being, your true state, your true essence being love. And I think, to me, that's the most powerful thing about the reason why I've stayed with the course so long is I realize, I call it my egoic programming is so strong and self-reinforcing that unless I replenish releasing that it's constantly convincing this experiencer person that I am, this consciousness that I am, that I'm a body, that I'm flawed, that I'm guilty, I'm doing everything wrong, like just all those egoic programs just keep running, and the course is like this perfect antidote. And I think of it as the undoing. It's like the uncola that it talks about removing the barriers to love's awareness. And what's so incredible about doing the course for so long is I realize that in any instant, like even right now, it's a holy instant if we let it be, if we allow it, if we call it in, if we experience it, if we just right now are just recognizing that we truly are one, we're one huge beingness of love, split up into different personalities and appearances. And it's all this way that it looks like the universe is so huge and there's all these universes, all these planets and galaxies. But I know that through and it's a thing where I think it's in us first, but the course reminds us of something that ancient melody thing about something that we didn't forget. And I think a lot of our brothers and sisters have forgotten, and the ones that are ready to awaken or remember, we're here to help in whatever ways that we're guided. And sometimes it is sharing the course, and sometimes it's just smiling and hugging somebody and letting them know that you feel them, you hear them, and you're coming from a place of non-judgment and compassion. And the course has really allowed me to do that a lot. I was going to say that it seems like there's so many different ways that I know that people do the course, and there's different ways over different years I've done the course. But one of my favorite ways that people do the course is somehow they'll get it, or someone will tell about it, or they'll find it and they'll put it on their shelf. And I how many times have I heard someone's had it on their shelf for 15 years, and then one day something happens where they go, oh, I'm going to pull it out. And I love that it is a living teaching, a living reminder. And so I just encourage everyone to listen to that inner voice, to, and whatever you call the inner voice. That I was doing the course before I realized that Helen had said that it was Jesus that gave her the course. And I was raised Christian, and Jesus was very real to me most of my life. And it's weird to be still doing the course and just being completely transparent of where I'm at now, is that, from what I've learned thanks to the internet, that I don't know that who I ever thought Jesus was a historical character even at all. But that doesn't take away from my experience of the course, because it talks a lot about the Christ consciousness. And I realize that whatever faith, whatever way that we experience that Christ consciousness, and I think there could be atheists that do the course if they understand that it's not about our egos believing in something and then trying to prove that our egos are right. It's about recognizing that we've all been programmed out of our essence, and in whatever way, whatever tools, whatever relationships we have, we can be reminded to laugh and to reclaim the miraculous love that we are, and that we truly are the creators of our experience. And so I'm very honored to be here, and that's all I want to say for now, but thank you.
Jim, I just want to jump in before next, just for 1 second, to clarify. Yes, when Helen was nailed to the wall, I should say, she did indeed say that the voice identified itself as Jesus. And but she never once, in all the time I was with her, called it Jesus. She called it the voice. The voice. Always. It was always the voice. And she was, nailed to the wall, like, okay, who is the voice and what? And that came through, and it was very authentic, and it was undeniable to her. But it didn't, it gives more authenticity to some people and less to others. Oh, she's crazy, she's heard Jesus. It's so it's truly, what is that you're listening to? And it is the connection to remind you to love. That's it. And we can get so hung up. I was brought up Jewish. My mother was brought up extremely Jewish, and she had a lot of healing in her family just because half the family heard she was doing something for Jesus. That's so surprisingly secondary, as including, people say it's gender specific, and why is it all he? And when one's practicing the course itself teaches us that all those words, they don't matter. What matters is the experience, practical application of, am I coming to this through the eyes of love or not? And that's what each lesson brings us back to. That is so important over and over. That's why the application of this course is so important. Doesn't all the words and terms and who they are and what they are. Yes, our ego goes through that, but I just wanted to add that while you said it instead of later when I forget it. So excuse me.
Well, thank you for that, because the word that was with me when I first started the course, it stayed consistent, is my friend. I call the author, I call the voice my friend, and that seems to work for me. But I love what you said too about how she was nailed to the wall about when she said that and the way that the course works is, I believe that we can all have our own our own experience of it. And when I heard you say that just now, I thought that of course it's the voice of Jesus, but it's also probably the voice of Buddha and every other master. And it gives me the opportunity, whenever my ego starts chewing on something, to see, am I putting up a barrier to the love that the course is coming from and reminding me of, and that I truly, it's like, you can get upset about the gender stuff. There's so many things that I've seen people get upset about with the course, and it's great when I see that person or myself step away and go, oh, it just gave me an opportunity to see that was me laying all that on the course, because the courses keep coming back to love. It's like everything's love. Like, how can you argue?
Not easy. I mean, Diane said, it's a simple course, and it really is in its simple truth. But I always laughed when I heard the story with Ken, where someone said, oh, I found A Course in Miracles and it's so fantastic and it's so wonderful. And he said, you're having a good time with it? And she said, yes. And his response is, you're not doing the course yet. It hasn't hit. Yeah, it is a challenge to remember to love. The simplest thing to do, and it is the biggest challenge, it seems.
And I just want to jump in and just say that if you're trying to figure out how to study the course, then, and I should speak for myself, all the years of suffering around, oh my God, how do I do this right? How do I get it? How do I figure it out? Why can't I memorize the lines? Why can't I remember every lesson? All that psychobabble blocked it all. It's like, it just blocked it all. There's just no way through that. So it was the antithesis of what I was trying to do. And it still is. It's not like I've got it all figured out in any way, shape, or form. But I just know that if I stop and I ask and listen, then and wait for the answer. And I know the answer is not the Holy Spirit if I'm still suffering. It's just that simple. So thanks.
Well, we do have a lot in our culture of training how to do things right. And, it makes us egoically feel comfortable when we know how to do something right. And I always use this example, and people can throw things at me for it. But, in our culture, we've even got to the point of child labor classes. Like, it's not like people haven't been born for centuries and centuries, but now we have to know how to do it the right way. And it's extreme. Our cultural, certainly here, in the United States, our cultural, we know how to do this and we've got it right. And the course unravels that, but it does unravel it through a comfortable discipline. And, oh yeah, I'm committed to doing that. I have the willingness to just show up and read this lesson, and it starts to teach you.
Mm-hmm. I want to say a word for the intellectual. Jesus did not write over 700 pages of text because the intellectual is not important. When I first started the course, I have to say that on a conscious level, I had no clue what I was getting into. And one of the things that helped me was going to weekly classes with the teacher whom I felt understood the course. I mean, I was a student of Ken's from the very beginning, and that was helpful. But as importantly, probably much more importantly than that, what the text offers is an explanation for why we don't want to do this, for why we have resistance. What the text offers us is showing us a mirror of how our defenses work. And while I think the workbook alone can get you very far, I think that the text speeded things up for me because I would notice with horror some of my resistance, and then I could at least see what I was doing, and when I was willing, I could stop. I also want to say that I'm an avid reader, but this text is the only book I've ever read in my life where when I opened it up, I fell asleep. You want to talk about resistance? This is powerful stuff. I also think that something magical happens when I read the text passively. In other words, I'm not struggling to understand it and I'm not conceptualized. I'm sort of reading it. And something filters through the unconscious, and all of a sudden, I've expanded from someone who was contracted. So I think, again, once again, Jesus was wise in saying it doesn't matter which you do first, but he does ask us to recognize it's a course. At some point, read the text. At some point, do the workbook, probably over and over again. Not that you need to. Once you've done it, you have been formally introduced to your inner teacher. But it's encouraging and helpful to a resistant ego, which we all are, whether we know it or not. It's helpful to be guided and reminded on a daily basis. And I have to say that for myself, again, I'm doing this since 1979. There were years I would step away for the entire summer. Doesn't mean I forgot the course. It meant I needed a chance to integrate. The course helps you to listen to your inner teacher. And for myself, that is not a clear, directive voice. It's a feeling. So it really doesn't matter if you're doing it formally or if you're just allowing it to percolate. The important thing is to step back and open and sense which part of the mind you're listening to. That's huge instruction.
Mhm. You know, it's interesting that the question of do you start with a workbook or do you read the text? When I found it, I knew it was my path. I had like Laura was raised Roman Catholic, loved the church, was a music teacher at a Catholic church or at a Catholic school, and then was fired for being gay. And so at that point, I was majorly seeking something that was truth with a capital T. And I'd found glimpses of it in a lot of things. And I came to the course through other teachers. So a lot of spiritual teachers I followed spoke about the course. And so when I started studying the course, I remembered one of them saying very clearly, the crux of the course is the workbook. And if you're going to be doing the course, it means you're doing the workbook. So I knew that when I would dig in, I would do the workbook and the text simultaneously. That was my path. It took me 2 years or longer to get through both. And I would do a lesson, I would read some of the workbook or some of the text. And in my text, I would highlight and underline things that resonated with me. And then there were things I would read and I'd be like, I have no clue what any of this means. And I just let that be because I knew it was my path and I would be continuing on this path for a long time. And I would come back to it over and over again. And so I just let that percolate, like Diane said. So it took me a year to get through. Now, this is the first year I've started on lesson 1 on January 1, and I'm going through the text as well. What I have found is that having done the workbook and now going through the text again, for I don't know how many times I've gone through it, it makes more sense now. And so that promise that the workbook trains you to think in the lines that the text puts forth is really true. That you start to immerse yourself in this material and it becomes more and more clear. it becomes, I think I'm at the point finally where the course has informed how I do other things. Like it's changed how I pray. It's changed how I am in the world in so many ways. I used to think about the course like the course is the thing, right? Ooh, and I love talking about the course. And now I'm more like, no, the thing is the Holy Spirit. The thing is knowing that we are love in a body. And the course is the way that we get there. And so many things have shifted. And I think anyone who feels called to it, if you know it's your path, then you just dig in. And I love the notion that you don't have to understand, you don't have to believe the ideas, just be willing to try it. And so, yeah, and I love talking about it. I think there's nothing better than finding people with whom you can speak about the course and introducing people to the course. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, do you find that it's like holographic, that like no matter where you are, like the whole course is, the DNA of the course is like practically every paragraph?
That's so bizarre to me because yeah, exactly. Like I will be studying the workbook and the text simultaneously, and it doesn't matter where I'm at in the workbook. What I read in the text seems to mirror what it's like, how do these end up lining up? And it happens no matter where I'm at. I could be way far in the workbook and sort of at the beginning of the text, and it still lines up. So I think that's sort of what you're referring to, Jem. It's amazing to me.
I think it's proof that we're not in charge. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Jerome, first of all, you glow when you talk about it. Like you just glow. So, that glow is proof. I mean, Jerome had to switch backgrounds because his eyes were on fire. Different background. We had to turn his glow down a little because he looked alien-like in that glow. But also, I just wanted to say so that people listening can know, when we refer to the course as a live or a living document, what that actually refers to. And what it means is it's very rare to have a living document. And the life of it is it meets you where you are at that given moment. So 10 years ago, I could have read a line in the course and thought I understood it. And I did understand it from that level of understanding. But the deeper I go, the more I mature, the more I study. When I come to that same line, it's like I've been brought down in a video game 10 levels further. I get my game points and everything else for being at this next place of, oh, it got me there now. And so that's what we're referring to when we say a living document. And I also wanted to say that our experiential sharings are amazing, but that, we have a course teacher like Diane who can put it in a context also in that teaching, as she holds up the intellectual as being something of tremendous value. Intellectual can be a really scary word for a lot of people. In fact, we have anti-intellectuals in this country who's like, if it's intellectual, count me out. And I would always say, very much what's been said here, if you come to the course and you don't like it, it is the best sleeping medicine on the planet. It can, don't read it at all. Just read it a couple of sentences at night and you're out. It will still get into you though. But that to actually be able to check in with a teacher every now and then and find a teacher that resonates with you. And there are many out there. Diane is one. And I think if people want to know or connect with her teachings, we'll figure out a way, or write in to figure out a way to how you get to her and do that. There's so many teachers out there that are excellent, but we are very grateful right now to have her with us, grounding the conversation. So I will go back to intellect. This course is dense, and people have asked, like, how do I even understand it? My answer is yes, there are a lot of other books that people have written of their way to come to the course. And again, I think if you're interested in the course, you're already on a path that's leading you to this practice. You might throw it away for 15 years and it might come back, or it launches you on something that's deeper. I mean, the fact is that the course itself, the voice, Jesus, whomever truly says, this is a Course in Miracles. It's not the Course in Miracles. This is for the people who resonate with this straight up the mountain. It calls it, path to awakening to the remembrance of that we are love. So the intellect that is so highly cherished in it is true. It's smart. And it's hard to poke holes in the system that it gives you, because it really is deep and, as I say, is so alive that you think you found, it's like a koan, you think you found the answer, but it laughs at you and it goes deeper and deeper until at, near the end. And it's certainly, 189 in the workbook lesson, it's now forget this course and forget these words and come walk with me. But your intellect gets to be used to such an extreme if you open up to how it wants to play with you in this incredible psychotherapy session. And so it's allowing for all types. And if you don't understand a single word of it and it will start teaching you. And again, there are formal teachers that are fantastically helpful. There are books. A lot of people came to the course through, Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. A lot of people came to the course through Marianne Williamson's books. There's so many, or originally through, Jerry Jampolsky, Love is Letting Go of Fear. There's so many books out there, and so many that hardly even relate to the course, but suddenly you'll find how they relate. So that's just something I would like to offer in the context of it, because the context does matter with this intellectual, the text. It's dense as can be.
I also think it's a safety, because there is resistance. He's very honest about the fact that there will be resistance both to doing forgiveness and to understanding the whole system. But you can kind of sit back and hear the concept or read the concept until you get safe enough to do it. And just another side of the coin, like another choice, I hear many people saying it's about being loving. My experience is it's about me looking at my mind and noticing where I'm making a judgment, because I am prone to making judgments, where I'm making a separation in my mind, and being willing to look at that differently, being open. And in doing that, something opens in me that is more loving. So I don't focus really on being loving, but I do focus on looking at my own mind and seeing what I'm choosing. And it's embarrassing how many times I'm choosing not to be loving. That's very useful information. And then I get safe enough to let it go.
And Diane, I think that's such an important point, because the first couple decades with the course, I didn't realize how full of it I was, in terms of, like, I thought I was this really loving spiritual person. And a friend of mine recently coined the phrase. He said, "That was your egoic. That was your spiritual ego." And it's been through the women in my romantic relationships that they would see my clay feet, so to speak, and see how I was denying, like, my feelings, or like I have a tendency to, like, not know I'm angry for months, and then it, like, can come out of me and stuff. And so I think a lot of what you're saying is what I've realized the last 10 years or so. The course has really been about right, like, even the last couple of days, I was just watching how there's just so much judgment coming out of me towards things, and just noticing that without then beating myself up about it, and without thinking that I'm guilty or worthy of being punished, like just going, oh, that's the nature of my ego mind. It's always judging and just wondering, I wonder what's underneath that. And And I just love how sitting with the Course where it talks about, like, I'm never upset for the reasons I think, it just helps separate me from the certainty that my ego has about knowing how everything is. And in the world today, I mean, I think we're surrounded by so much judgment and so much fear, but it's not really safe to and I don't even want to use the word call it out, because that even sounds like that's a judgment, but it's not safe to be vulnerable about it. You know, like there's times where there's been different presidents. I thought, God, if they can only just say, you know, I'm really scared right now. I don't know what I'm doing here. You know, that would be so much better than we have this idea of, oh, they're wrong and they're right and we're going to do, and I just love how the Course is an antidote to all that.
Yeah. Sharon, go for it.
Oh, well, gosh, I've just loved listening to all of you talk. I came to the Course for the first time in the early 90s when and I don't even remember who told me about this class that was going to take place in San Rafael. And it was called Attitudinal Healing. And it was run by a Dr. Jerry Jampolsky, who I had heard of from his visit to the Phil Donahue show with his kids, Jerry's kids, they called him. And he worked with children that was in life-threatening situations. And so the attitudinal healing course that I took was to train those of us that was taking the course to be facilitators for groups where the people that were in life-threatening situations could come meet once a week and talk about their fears about what was going on. And our job was just to listen. And we practiced all of that with what Jerry called empathic listening. And we had to listen to the other person talk about something about themselves. We practiced, and we had to listen for 5 minutes without thinking of what we were going to say next, without judging anything, or just being present and listening. And that was a wonderful experience. After that, my life went on a little while, and I got into a group, but I got very disenchanted with the biblical sounding of it because I was raised in a hellfire and damnation congregation, and I left all that in my early 20s, and I didn't want to have anything to do with anything that sounded like the Bible. I didn't like that God in the Bible. I didn't understand how anyone could like that God in the Bible, and I wasn't having any part of it. And so I put the course aside. I had one friend that kept saying, please just go back to the course. It wasn't until she called me many years later asking me if I would read a book. Her minister at church had a separate group that was studying the course, and she had this author coming in. He had written a book, and she wanted to know if I would be willing to read the book and then give him feedback on it. And his name was Gary Renard. I'd never heard of him. And so I read his first 2 books, and I remember having a conversation with him, telling him how much I really enjoyed those books, and they lit the fire in me again. And that was, I think, in 2009 or 2010. And I became a very serious, dedicated student of the course at that time. And since then, there's been a lot of challenges for me personally, because I take it real serious when it says not to judge. And so, you know, in the recent political thing, just admitting that I don't vote has been very scary, because a lot of people really judge that if you don't vote. But I loved hearing Judy on one of the podcasts say that that there was a situation where Mother Teresa, they were all together at some event, and they were supposed to vote on something, and Mother Teresa wouldn't vote. And someone asked her why, and she said, because it would make me choose between 2 people I love. And I loved that. It's like, okay, that's my answer from now on, because that is how I felt. I don't like Trump as personally, but I don't hate him. And I think he's part of the same sonship that I am. And actually he's me. So the course has really helped me stay away from judgment a lot, not completely, or else I would, you know, not be here. But I love how every time I think, I might have something. Life shows me, oh, you don't have that at all. And I have to go back to, you're right, I know nothing. But I do know that I'm led, and all I have to do is ask. And I'll always be given an answer. Maybe not right immediately, but the answer is there, and I trust it. And so I don't expect an answer right away. I'm very okay with just show me whenever it's right. But in the meantime, I'm very drawn to the course, and I love how I can read something in it and then 2 weeks later read the same thing, and it's like, oh, how come I've never saw this before? It's new all the time, and I guess that's why, Tam, you say it is a living document. It's new. It never gets old.
It is, and there's also that question too that you just brought up in me, which is, if I don't have judgments, I won't be here. I don't come with that understanding. I come with the understanding of you can still be here. you can still be here. You're just not identified in the same way in the ego world. It's not like all of this suddenly disappears and we've evanesced into the next, unimaginable galaxy. That being here gives us the opportunity in this dream to notice where we judge negatively, positively. As Diane said, what's so extraordinary and what the Course gives us is the opportunity to choose. And that choice is a judgment. It's our better judgment, of truth coming to teach us and support us in our choices. And so the choice is, if you are judging negatively something and it keeps you from remembering who you are, and you're choosing that, oh, I'm choosing this instead of the other. Interesting. Maybe I can choose again. That's what choose once again. We always, in the opportunity of this dream, get the choice to choose again, again, again. And when the balance my feeling about it is when the balance becomes more that I'm choosing peace, and I'm choosing peace, and I'm choosing peace, a tipping point starts to happen where all those other thoughts, where I even have to think, oh, that person's separate from me, I better not do this or that. Everyone comes to their decisions in different ways, because I do vote for my own set of reasons, and there's no criticism. It's just, that's where I'm led at this point. But because the world of illusion, there's mixing levels, and there's so many different things, and everyone has their right to choose. But the choice with the Course is peace or not. Peace or not.
And I'm struck, Tam, by and Diane spoke about being loving, like learning to be loving. And as she was saying that, I just had this flash of knowing that the Course teaches us that we are loving. It's who we are. It's, as Marianne Williamson often says, it's an undeletable file. We just have to download it to the screen. And we fail to do that. But that's our essence, is that we are love. Love created me like itself. That's one of my favorite lessons in the Course. And then when Sharon was speaking, I thought about willingness again. The Course says our good intentions mean nothing. Our willingness is everything. And so as a student of the Course, I think the biggest thing for me was just my willingness to pick this up and to let it guide me, to let it be my path, and to be willing to be confused about what it meant. But knowing that there was something, like there was just this internal knowing that this was my path, and it would lead me to peace. And your mother always used the final lesson of the Course as her prayer. This holy instant I would give to you, be you in charge. And that, I think, as we study the Course, that's what we do. It's like, okay, I'm going to let this inform me. I'm going to seek through this material to know who I am and who I belong to. and just I think that's, you know, just that space of allowing it to, you know, you read it, you do the lessons as best you can. Like, I am so imperfect in studying the lessons. I forget to read them. I'll go a whole day and think, oh, I haven't done my lesson, and it'll be like past midnight. And so I'll read the lesson for the next day, you know, at midnight. And I'm like, okay, well, it is the next day, you know, but I think for us to be so free of judgment of ourselves and to allow ourselves to be guided, I think that's really the essence of this course.
And you know, the thing that I love about it too is even when I would be studying the text or reading it, and it's like, oh man, I don't get this. I could always fall back on nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. It's like, yes, I get that. And if I get that, everything else is going to be okay.
It was that line that hooked me. It was that line that hooked me because I understood that in the most perfect, growing up Roman Catholic and thinking I am sinful and all this stuff, and then reading that.
Yeah, and that I am here only to be truly helpful. When I walked into that class with Jerry Jampolsky, the first thing I saw was this huge blue poster, and it said, I am here only to be truly helpful. And it felt like it just knocked me over. And I said, where did that come from? Because I felt like I had written it. It's like, that's my statement. And they said, oh, it's from A Course in Miracles. And they never really said anything else about A Course in Miracles through the whole class. But as my attitudinal healing teacher friend said, attitudinal healing, oh, it was Carol Howe that said to me, get in touch with attitudinal healing because they are really just a cover up for A Course in Miracles. I love that description of it.
You know, I just want to say, Jerome, and all of us touching on willingness, there is, and I'm going to read this. This is the text is context for the lessons. And you think of the word context, it's with text. So the context, just to Jerome, what you're saying about the willingness is two-parted here. In the text, it says, your part is only to offer him a little willingness to let him remove all fear and hatred and to be forgiven. And there's a whole chapter, I think, on a little willingness. And it's, here's one aspect: salvation, perfect and complete, asks but a little wish that what is true be true, a little willingness to overlook what is not there, a little sigh that speaks for heaven as a preference to this world that death and desolation seem to rule. So you don't even have to have a big whopper of willingness. It's just like, well, out of a corner of an eye, okay, I'll let that little pinhole in.
And there's another part of the course where it says the Holy Spirit responds to our slightest invitation.
Yep.
Just the littlest invitation, and he comes rushing in.
So even if someone is just have one little eye going, I am asking this question about practicing the course. I don't even know that I'm interested in the course really, but maybe that's all you need. You've already come. Mm-hmm.
And I love that Buckminster Fuller talked about, he said, call me trim tab. And he explained that on the big ships, that the rudders, whatever, that steer them, that they even with all the strength in them, that they can't turn the ships unless this little tiny dinky rudders turns first, that creates enough of a wave that then allows the big one. And I just feel that line, that is probably one of the most powerful concepts of the course that I remember, that in the deepest, darkest places I can get into, or relationships. Because one thing I actually was hoping we could talk about a little bit is how you deal with not being a doormat and the conflicts, because that is in the world. But I know that just when I go to that place of just having the littlest willingness to just ask for some help, all of a sudden it feels like there's a crack in the situation that lets light in.
I just wanted to say, Jim, my parents, my mother and Bob Scutch's license plate on their car was trim tab.
Oh, I love it.
Sorry, I had to have that in. Go ahead.
No, so I was going to say my go-to prayer is, I am willing to see this differently. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, whatever it is, just I'm willing to see this differently. And I think just even having that kind of go-to it's been so huge for me, because when I'm willing, then I do.
Mhm.
Then somehow or another, something shifts, and it happens quickly. I just am in a different place when I say that I'm willing to see this differently.
I think pre-course, when I would have a challenge in my life, I would become so focused on that challenge. I was that challenge. That's all that existed. And what the course has really taught me is there's another way of seeing this. You have no, it just gives me the experience of choice. And when I open up, when anybody opens up, something changes step by step, taking me closer and closer to an experience of peace.
I know we're starting to sum up here, and I would like to say, and I'd love us each to have a moment to give a last comment here, but I'd like to say it is the beginning of the year. Whatever one does, don't stress. If you haven't started it on January 1st, don't stress it today. It's always the right day. And the end to my beginning story of doing the course again, I told my mother, I said, I had this experience. I need to start the course. And this is what was given to me a couple of days ago. And I started it, and my mother was crying, and I said, oh, please don't make a big deal out of it. I didn't even want to tell you. And she said, no, you don't understand why I'm crying. And I said, why? And she said, because the 2 days ago that you got the message to do that and you started was the day all those years ago that I was handed the course by Helen and Bill. And so you don't know what your timing is. And of course, I'm like, oh, I got to live the legacy no matter what. I can't have my own story. I can't, but it knows everything is perfect. Your timing to pick it up is perfect. Your timing to throw it away is perfect. Your timing to do the lessons is perfect. It's happily orchestrated. It is beyond our own hands, our own thoughts. Your teaching has already begun. Your connection has already begun, because there is the searching and the willingness, and they do go hand in hand. So happy New Year.
Amen.
And Alex, you go after me.
Sure. Well, to follow up on what Tam was saying, I wanted to just briefly allude to, with regard to people who are looking to study the course, is the option, and again, there's no right path, but the option of actually studying it in a group. Because I found that was, my experience of the course really deepened when I did a group, and I've been in a group now for 6 or 7 years. We gather on a Saturday afternoon. I take my Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, most people say, oh, weekends you want to like relax and, go to a restaurant. I mean, I love it, because Diane was talking about the application of the course. And when you interact with other human beings, collectively trying to understand the text, reading it together, keying off of one another, miraculous things happen. It's very interesting, just to follow up on what Jerome said, is, sometimes when back to a common theme has been that quite often the text, it's difficult, it's dense, that when you're in a group of people that you all kind of feel the same way, then your ego kind of can let go, because you're not judging yourself because, okay, he feels that way too. And when your ego let go, quite often what happens in the group is that there's an interpretation that comes through the group collectively, where you then understand what the text is saying. And so you get to experience really that genuinely, as the course says, we are one. I've had experiences where people, again, I think I'm segueing off of what Jerome said, is what we're reading of the text. Like we'll talk about, we find that we're having the same issues come up in our week, the last week, that we're dealing with, let's say, a certain relationship, and then we talk about it, and lo and behold, the next paragraph we read has the answer to that issue. That's miraculous, and it's a wonderful experience. So I personally am a big fan of groups. So I just want to leave with that.
Beautiful. Thanks. So I just want to say that if anyone is being told how to study the course or read the course. That's not inner guidance. And so just to remember that. And I have conversations with the Holy Spirit every day and ask for guidance. I don't always listen. I don't always want to hear. I'm resistant often, but I do know that in the beginning of December of this year, I was asking, I really don't want to do the lessons alone, but I do want to start them in the beginning of the year. And I would like a group. What do I do? And I just kept asking over and over and over again. Well, New Year's Day was Saturday. And on Wednesday, I said, Holy Spirit, any ideas? And on Thursday, a donor called me who I had met last year and said, we're starting a group this week. And I thought of you, and I'd love for you to be a part of our group. And it was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it felt so right. There was an inner yes. And that's what I needed in the moment. So remember that we all have the ability to ask and to listen. And like I said, we'll know it's truth if it's neutral and loving. Thank you.
I have a couple closing thoughts that I was thinking about the book. There was a Bob Sketch that wrote Journey Without Distance.
Yes.
I just love the title, that we're on a journey without distance to a destination we never left. And then the book about Bill, remember, never forget to laugh. It's interesting to be doing the course, knowing that we're whole, we're complete, we already are love. It's like we're not becoming something different than what we are. We're releasing what's in the way of embracing what we are. So all of you, whoever's listening, I hope you're allowing yourself to experience the love that you are and how loved you are by us and the forces above and beyond. And I just want to read this one quote that's one of my favorite sections in the course. Whenever you feel your confidence wane and your hope of success flicker and go out, repeat your question and your request, remembering that you are asking of the infinite creator of infinity who created you like himself.
Oh, that's great. I'll finish up with, and then let Diane speak. Last year was a wonderful year for me because it brought me to the Foundation for Inner Peace. I felt like I was alone and kind of alone in the political climate, and things were hard for me. And when I found my place here at the foundation, it was like finding my tribe, and it has meant everything to me. And I appreciate that the classes that I'm taking with Diane, it has helped me go deeper. And I just really appreciate everybody in this foundation. You're my people, and I love you.
I'll hop in really quick before Diane goes. Just a practical thing. Tam mentioned that this is a living document. And growing up Roman Catholic, one of the things that we talk about is that the word is proclaimed in the assembly. So at every Mass, they read the scriptures aloud. And I love that the foundation has the digital edition and that you can listen to the lessons being read.
Yes.
And I also know that there's a really great Audible. I think it's the same person reading on Audible the text. And so for people who are having difficulty understanding the text, something happens when it's read by somebody who knows it well, because some of the iambic pentameter and the way the sentences are set up, it's difficult sometimes to read it and to understand it because the inflection needs to be right. And so every time someone in our group reads from the text, I hear it and it sinks in a different way. So I would say, and some of us are auditory learners too. That's a really, really beautiful way to engage with this material.
Right.
And I read the lessons myself, but I always I actually put it on my phone so I can get to the digital edition, and I will be out walking my dog and I will listen to that beautiful voice reading the lessons, and I experience them in a different way every time. And I just think anyone who's struggling with the material, that is just a phenomenal way. And it just becomes so alive when it's read aloud. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And Jerome, I know the kind of almost opposite. I know someone who couldn't understand it until he read it aloud himself, and he
Right.
ended up getting a little podium to stand at and open the course and read the whole thing aloud. So there's so many different ways, and none of them are wrong. I mean, some
No.
people will have it on a tape and listen to it as they're asleep at night. Like, so many options.
I know your mom said she did that, and I just think
She
that's
did. Oh,
beautiful
she
too.
loved doing that,
Yeah.
and Robert loves doing that. He just plays it throughout the day, and yes, over and over again. So, you know, it's another voice reminding you continuously.
Yeah.
What's your choice? Bring us home, Diane.
Okay, there's everyday life. There's stuff that seems to be happening in my personal life. And I think what the course gives me is the reminder that there are no accidents. Why I'm with a person, why there's a health challenge, why finances are the way they are. Everything can be brought to the living document, which, if you notice, as long as it is totally abstract. These are abstract principles of truth that we are asked to use living our life, not denying anything, but living our life. How can I see this to remind me of who I am? So it's as if the New York Times or whatever newspaper you might have once read put an ad in and it said, tailor-made script just for you. One day only, no charge. Please read it. It will change every experience that anyone has if they are so called to follow it.
Thank you so much, Diane, and the rest of our panel. You all, wow, it's awesome. You covered so much of what the audience had questions about, and I appreciate you all being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to our discussion panelists, and we thank all our attendees who joined us today. I'm going to make a few announcements about resources that may be helpful to you in creating your own course practice. So keep an eye on the group chat for website links that we will be pasting there. First, I want to take a few moments to talk about the website. Frequently asked questions, or FAQs, are such a helpful resource. From the homepage at the top menu, if you select resources and then select FAQs, there are many answers for newer students who can learn more about A Course in Miracles and even get some recommendations for how to study. Additionally, for any students who are interested, and we did receive many questions that came in from our audience, is how to find a study group. On that menu, and even in the FAQs, there is a link about how to find a study group in your area. So please check that out. Moreover, there's a study guide on the website. To help your course study, we have short online guidebook and a video from our foundation co-presidents, Tamara Morgan and Dr. Robert Rosenthal. You can find this free study guide from the menu at the website homepage. We're adding the web address into the chat, so definitely go there to download your free gifts. A Course in Miracles web edition became available online earlier this past year. Our web edition contains not only the full text from each workbook lesson, but also accompanying audio. So go ahead, read, share your favorite quote, listen to A Course in Miracles from any of your devices. Social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. There are so many online. There's a lot of new activities going online. By following us on Facebook and Instagram, you'll see visuals of the workbook lessons each day. Additionally, we will soon be offering weekly interactive discussions on lessons of the prior week. So you can join us either by going to Facebook Live or Zoom. Stay tuned with the foundation. You'll be learning more soon. We want to make sure you have heard also about the Miracles Voices podcast that started last year. We invite you to join so you can hear course students share reflections on how A Course in Miracles has shifted their outlook and fostered healing through forgiveness. Check it out at miraclevoices.org. We also ask you to please visit the donor page so that our listeners and our donors can see how we steward your donations. We thank our watchers, our tribe, for taking the time to go to the donation page. You can do so at the website address acim.org/donate. The Foundation for Inner Peace sincerely appreciates all of your support and received through donations, but as well as through the Amazon Smile program. It's a simple way for you to support the foundation when you shop. It can be activated in the Amazon shopping app on your smartphone. We have a web address right there. And as we wrap up the live feature today, a brief survey should display on your screen. So let us know how we're doing, what kind of content you would like to continue to see for these webinars. The foundation will announce the topic and time of the next webinar soon. With love and gratitude, we look forward to having you again and see you next time.